or universal service. We also have standardized colors that are coming out that need to be in place by January 1st, 2036. And we're also requiring a label requirement. And one of the tools that you'll hear me talk about later is that we do have model signage for these labels in all different languages. Then folks need to establish an edible food recovery program. And so as you saw, that was one of the goals for 1383. And as you guys know, there are different tiers for who needs to be in an edible food program. There's a tier 1 and the tier 2s. And if needed, I could talk about those more later. Also, jurisdictions must conduct annual education and outreach to their generators. And this is where CalRecycle will really probably help with what kind of education, what kind of outreach. I'll go into what kind of samples we have up right now. Then we have a procurement requirement, right? Kind of a closed loop circle. If we're collecting all of this organics and processing it into some kind of material or end product, where is it going to go? So we have a procurement requirement also in the regulations of SB 1383. So jurisdictions have to procure a certain level of recovered organic waste products. And those products could include compost, renewable gas, or electricity from biomass or mulch. And there's actually going to be targets on the jurisdictions, and we're going to actually notify the jurisdictions of their targets prior to 2022. And I'll actually talk about what we have right now, which will help you guys with your targets as well. And then there's adequate capacity. Because we're going to do all this collection, we're going to implement edible food programs, we need to ensure that there's adequate capacity. So each county will actually lead this effort by coordinating with the cities, the special districts that provide solid waste collection services, and the regional agencies located within the county. And I'll also talk about a tool that we're going to provide for that. And last but not least, jurisdictions must monitor and conduct enforcement. Again, education and monitoring begins in 2022. Jurisdictions must do an annual compliance review of commercial businesses to make sure that they have service. There are contamination monitoring requirements. And there's also an implementation record. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then there are reporting requirements to the department. And last but not least, and you probably heard us harp on this quite a bit, is there is a requirement to adopt an ordinance or an enforceable mechanism consistent with the regulatory requirements by January 1st, 2022. So right around the corner. I'll talk more again about this tool that we helped develop to help jurisdictions with this requirement. And last, and I think most importantly, CalRecycle has and will continue to provide technical assistance to jurisdictions on every component of SB 1383. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. So the next, this is probably something big on everybody's mind, and I just wanted to do a really quick slide on this, but this is the timeline for the department's enforcement action over jurisdictions. We did release a compliance guidance, I believe, in August of 2020, and I could provide that link to you as well if you'd like it. But it basically shows that there is quite a bit of time before the penalty phase of SB 1383. And there's some discretion within the enforcement process of SB 1383, which was built in for the department. So you could see in the 90 days to correct where that NOV or notice of violation is issued. Before that, we're actually going to be doing a compliance review or a compliance evaluation to determine how compliant jurisdictions are with 1383. We'll let these jurisdictions know what the violations are, and there will be some time for them to correct it before the clock starts on if we want to issue an NOV. So that's the discretion that CalRecycle has. There's also another discretion part on if we choose to penalize folks. So if they go through the notice of violation process, if they go to the corrective action plan process, before we actually decide to penalize, there is a discretion part in CalRecycle's regulations right now. So I could go more into that later, but you probably have heard us talk about it more, and we could provide the compliance guidance document as well. And then one thing to note on this is we do recognize that there are impacts right now with the pandemic, and it's unprecedented, and jurisdictions may have a difficult time complying with SB1383. However, we're working towards options for compliance, developing an understanding of what extenuating circumstances is. That's part of this process right here. We do know that jurisdictions will need additional support and compliance assistance, and we're always looking at ways to optimize internal staff resources to provide appropriate support. So again, let us know if you need help with anything. Always happy to sit on a call with you guys to talk about what you guys are planning, what may not be able to happen before 2022. We really want to know what you guys are working on. Then going into actually what the tools are, and this is where I want to spend a bulk of our time, is we want to provide jurisdictions with as many tools and guidance so you do not have to recreate the wheel. And hopefully this is going to be cost saving for you guys. And a good example of this are the model tools that we released maybe in August, September of last year. They're a plug and play. We used HF&H, and actually Diversion Strategies helped with the model food recovery agreement. And so these tools are really meant for jurisdictions to plug and play. There's a lot of options in these tools. HF&H, Diversion Strategies, and Deborah Kaufman, they all put in places in these tools where here's some extra guidance for you. Here's what you'll have to amend depending on what your jurisdiction is doing. So as you can see, there's that mandatory organics disposal reduction ordinance. I like to call it the enforcement ordinance, or the enforceable mechanism. So that's the tool that you'll use for that one requirement if you want to use this tool for SB 1383. So again, thank you so much to Aaron and Rachel for working on the edible food recovery one. It's gonna really help our jurisdictions. And that tool is mainly for the use of a tier 1 or tier 2 generator to contract with an edible food recovery service or organization. So jurisdictions could specifically use that tool to give to their tier 1, tier 2 generators, because one of the requirements in 1383 is that MOU or some kind of agreement be in place. So that's a tool that they could really use. Something else that we released in March of 2020 was the R3 local jurisdiction service rate study. So that actually explains raising rates for jurisdictions. Mind you, that was pre-COVID. So some of the data may be a little bit off, but it is a good study to read on. But it does provide just general guidance on how to set organic recycling rates. Also, we have case studies on jurisdictions that have set rates, funded infrastructure, and educated the public and elected officials. And back to the labeling part, we do have labeling on our education website that is in different languages. So we have English, Spanish, Mandarin, Punjabi, Korean, and Russian. And there is a requirement in 1383 if there's certain languages that are spoken in your community that you have those that information in those languages for those folks. So we wanted to provide this model signage and labeling for you guys as well. Next. So this is actually what's coming up next in order to help you guys. And again, we want to hear if you guys have anything else that you need us to create. So CalRecycle has begun working with a contractor on the data research for the statewide education campaign. This campaign is focused using community social-based marketing to drive changes in behavior. And I believe some of your jurisdictions do use this now, but we wanted to provide it statewide. And then in late 2021, we expect to start releasing many tools and trainings for jurisdictions on this. So be on the lookout for that. We're also developing a series of training videos to support further developing the understanding of the regulation requirements. We're in the beginning phases of that. We're finalizing a couple videos right now, but it's a quick snippet that you could listen to, and it'll explain the regulations in further details. Next, and I think something that most of you will be interested in is, as I mentioned earlier, there is an implementation record or record keeping requirement within 1383. Right now, we have a team working on an electronic implementation record tool. This will be released sometime in summer 2021, if not a little early in fall, depending on how we handle the ADA compliance of it. But this is to help jurisdictions maintain their records, and it's to provide an example. So it's not required that you use it, but it will help show examples of what the records should look like, maybe the organization that you want to keep the records in. But this is something that is required in 1383, that you maintain records. Also, if you have a regional agency, we have developed language for amending the JPA to address 1383 requirements that the JPA will be taking on. I believe we also amended it to add in 341 and 1826 also. Then in early 2021, I'm hoping April-ish, we're going to be having a survey tool that will help jurisdictions gather information about edible food recovery organization and services regarding their capacity. Then also with that, we're sharing best management practices for identifying tier 1 and tier 2 commercial edible food generators, and also educational information. With that too, there's a lot of edible food stuff. We're going to be creating an edible food capacity planning guidance or tool. So it may look like a form of a calculator or some kind of Excel spreadsheet. And last, to talk about capacity planning, we are going to be releasing an organic waste capacity planning calculator, again, around April-ish in 2021. So a few months away. With all of those tools, we will be doing webinars on them, on how to use them, answer any questions that you have. So what we usually like to do for most of our tools is we'll release it. You could sit on it for maybe about a month or two, and then we'll have the webinar. Then the next tool that we're actually going to create, and it'll hopefully be released somewhere fall of this year, is route reviews. We're going to be doing route reviews, best management practices. Route reviews are an option in 1383 for the container contamination minimization requirement. That's a mouthful, but route reviews are an option. So we will be putting together best management practices. We've been a little bit delayed because of COVID, but we will get those out sometime this year for you guys. And last but not least, our staff, again, can help individual jurisdictions with the implementation tools. We could help identify funding resources for companies that want to site or expand their recycling manufacturing operations, and we could answer any of your questions on the regulations. And our staff could also attend and present board or council meetings. So I think that's really important. I like to say, you know, we'll be the bad guy for you guys if you're trying to get something through your board or council. We're more than happy to do it. I know some of our staff have worked late to attend late board or council meetings, like at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. So please put in that request if you need us to attend and present at a board or council meeting. And then again, if there are any other tools that you think we need to be developing, please let us know. One thing to note is we just went live, I think earlier this week, with a local implementation example section on our website, and that's highlighting what you guys are actually doing. So right now we have Oceanside and Palo Alto, but if you guys want to feature any of your tools or guidance, flyers, videos on our website, we'll review them and we'll let you know if we're going to put them up. But there is a section on our website for you guys to actually see what your peers are doing. And last but not least, I know you guys have probably signed up for our listserv. These are all the upcoming dates for our webinars. They start next week. The first one is a regional webinar for Central Valley. And please note, you don't have to only attend your region. You could attend other regions since it is going to be a webinar. And we'll cover collections, procurement, edible food. They'll be an hour long each with about 5 to 10 minute presentation of an overview of the regulations. And then we're going to leave it the rest up to Q&A. So we think that's important. There's the private funding webinar. We just had a public funding webinar this week. It went really well, but that's not specific for 1383. It's for all recycling manufacturing infrastructure. Procurement calculator. We released a procurement calculator a couple of weeks ago, and now we're going to have a webinar on it in a couple of weeks. So come with questions for that. And then a lot of people are wondering what the new solid waste facility requirements are in SB 1383. We did revise some Title 14 and Title 27 stuff in 1383. So we have a team on February 4th that is going to go through that. And if you need any links to these, please let me know. Happy to provide them to you. But we will be sending out a reminder email today via our SLCP listserv, which is on this page. So this is the end of my presentation. Again, please reach out if you guys have any questions. Our listserv is the first link listed. Then it's our revamped website, which include FAQs, rulemaking documents, all of the tools I just listed. And then there's my contact and the general inbox. So I'll turn it